We are continuing to monitoring the ongoing trade situation in Washington. Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc is, in his third straight week of talks with American officials. CBC News has learned that Mr. LeBlanc told a meeting of premiers earlier today that while a deal is not imminent, the current deal under discussion would see the United States lower but not fully get rid of tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, autos, and forestry products. To get a better insight on what's going on, Lana Payne sits on the advisory committee for Canada-U.S. economic relations. She's also the national president for Unifor. Ms. Payne, thank you so much for speaking with us today. But I do need to start with the breaking news related to Stellantis. I'm wondering if you can sort of bring us up to speed with what is going on right now with the new information that the company provided to you about what's going on with the plant in Brampton.
Yeah, this has been a bit of a very, very difficult day, Katie, for our members in auto, but particularly at the Brampton Assembly Plant. We had gotten new information from the company on Wednesday that they are looking at selling that facility, and so that would bring an end to auto production there. And of course, it's been 18 long months of work by our union to try and not to end up in this place. Yeah, a very, very difficult day, difficult news, but we'll do what unions do. We're going to fight with everything we have because what's at stake here is Brampton, of course, but we're fighting for the whole industry right now.
In this specific location, what does it mean for immediate jobs and sort of jobs that sort of feed into this facility?
Yeah, it's huge. Every assembly plant is very difficult to replace, and you can imagine the economic impact is massive. We have 2,200 people who work at that plant and thousands more who work in auto parts. And then, of course, the general spin-off from that kind of impact is great. And it's not something that you can easily replace.
So if you are an auto worker and you are watching this right now, what is your message to so many people who work in this industry and are seeing blow after blow after blow, because in part, or perhaps do you think that this is all a part of the trade war?
There's many factors at play here, but we cannot obviously discount the huge impact the trade war has had on the auto sector and many other sectors as a result of the Section 232 tariffs. It has been punishing. It has been brutal. The forestry sector is going through similar challenges, very, very difficult for workers. We've had many workplaces close, mills that have been idled in that sector too. And this is the message that I bring to every time I go to this trade committee table, that we are different in Canada. This is something that we have to continue to work hard at explaining to the United States. We actually have balanced trade in the auto sector with the U.S. We are not the problem here. And even a lower tariff than what we're experiencing right now would still be quite problematic for a manufacturing sector where we have spent decades integrating this sector with the United States. This is not easy to undo, and unscrambling that egg is very, very painful. And it's our members who are on the front lines of that. And so, making sure that our negotiators understand this. I know they don't have an easy job, Katie. None of about what we're experiencing right now is easy. But the reality is we have to get the best deal for Canada. And if we can't get the best deal for auto workers and forestry workers and everybody else, we have to be willing to do what's necessary here. And I think you're hearing it from a lot of us. A line has to be drawn in the sand. And that means we have to look at retaliating in all of the ways that we can.
Donald Trump, when he is in the Oval Office, when he is at events, he frequently talks about how he doesn't want Canadian cars. We don't need them. Canadians fully recognize that the North American auto industry is deeply integrated, and there are jobs in all three countries, Canada, the U.S., and Mexico, that all rely on these integrated supply chains. But when news like this comes out, when a company like Stellantis is deciding not to invest in Canada versus investing in the United States. Is that what Donald Trump is ultimately trying to do here?
What he's missing is that these tariffs are actually hurting these very companies that operate in the U.S. as well, and hurting them deeply. If you look at their bottom lines, they have paid billions and billions and billions of dollars in tariffs. The reason many of these companies operate in Canada is not just because they have access to the U.S. market. It is because Canadians buy a lot of vehicles. Our market is worth over $100 billion a year, and many of the cars that we buy in Canada actually come from the United States. That's why, none of these arguments by the president hold water. The reality is Canada is definitely not the problem here. And we do, in some ways, have a shared problem. And that is, we should be looking at, the billions and billions of imports of cars that are coming from all over the world, where countries or companies are not investing in either of our countries. How do we deal with that problem and focus on that rather than, really beating up on the companies that are actually manufacturing in North America, including in the United States?
Before we get to today's briefing where you spoke or where you got an update about the state of trade talks, can you just give us really quickly a sort of a sense of what comes next in terms of what's going on with Stellantis and Brampton, and what members can expect, the sort of immediate next steps in what you're doing?
Well, obviously, we are currently, not to layer the problems here, but we are currently in auto negotiations. We've just finished negotiations with Ford Motor Company. We're now at the table with General Motors. Those talks will continue into next week. And then we head into bargaining with Stellantis. And all of this, of course, will be subject to that round of bargaining. So more to come on that. We will continue to talk with the company, to obviously stress what it is that we feel they should be doing here. We will be talking to government and policymakers as well, because on that front, we need an auto policy in this country that actually encourages investment in Canada and manufacturing in Canada. And there are elements of the auto policy that we have right now that are just completely unworkable and do not support that.
You were on the briefing call with the Canadian trade team. What stood out to you about what's happening right now behind the scenes in Washington?
Well, as someone who's familiar with negotiations, I would say to you, this is not surprising that we have many days left to talk with the United States with this kind of deadline that we've all set upon ourselves, because August 19th is when the president has said he's going to introduce these new tariffs on portions of the Canadian economy and sectors where a lot of Canadian workers are employed. So I expect where we are is where we are, and that is, it's tough right now. My encouragement always to these negotiators is, hold your nerve, hold the line. We can't afford to give any more concessions here, and we need a good deal. And that means we've got to grind it out until the very end. And if in the end we can't get a deal that's acceptable for Canada, we have to look at these other options, and that means retaliating against the U.S., because we cannot sustain any more of these tariffs, and we have to draw a line in the sand.
All right, Lana Payne, the national president of Unifor and also on the advisory committee of Canada-U.S. economic relations. Thank you for your time on a very difficult day.
Thank you, Katie.